Most students believe they're failing because they're lazy, distracted, or not smart enough. They think the problem is motivation, or discipline, or talent. But in reality, most students aren't failing because they don't study enough. They're failing because they're studying the wrong way. And the worst part is, they don't even realize it. From a young age, students are taught that studying means sitting longer, rereading notes, highlighting textbooks, and pushing through exhaustion. If they struggle to remember something, they assume they need more hours. If grades drop, they double the time. But more time doesn't fix a broken method. It only hides a real problem until it's too late. The human brain doesn't learn by exposure. It learns by effortful recall. And that single misunderstanding is the reason most students feel busy but remember nothing. When a student rereads notes, the brain recognizes the information. That recognition feels familiar, and familiarity feels like learning. But it's an illusion. The brain isn't retrieving the information. It's just seeing it again. And recognition is passive. Memory requires work. This is why students can read the same page 5 times and still blank out during an exam. The information never became accessible. It was never trained for retrieval. It stayed stuck on the page instead of moving into memory. Most students also believe that understanding something once means they'll remember it later. But understanding and remembering are not the same process. Understanding happens in the moment. Memory is built over time, and the brain only strengthens what it's forced to recall, not what it passively consumes. This is where the correct way to study begins. Instead of asking, "Did I understand this?" effective students ask, "Can I recall this without looking?" That single shift changes everything. Because the moment a student closes their notes and tries to pull information from memory, the brain starts adapting. It starts building stronger connections. Even when the recall fails, learning is happening. Struggle is not a sign of failure. It's a sign the brain is working. But most students avoid that struggle. They prefer methods that feel smooth and comfortable. Highlighting, rereading, watching explanation videos again and again. These methods feel productive because they reduce friction. But the brain grows through friction, not comfort. Another mistake students make is cramming. Cramming feels powerful because it creates short-term familiarity. The information feels fresh. Confidence rises. But the brain hasn't had time to consolidate anything. Once sleep, stress, or time intervenes, the memory collapses. The brain needs spacing. It needs repeated exposure across time. Not all at once. Not in one long session the night before. When learning is spaced out, the brain is forced to retrieve information again and again, strengthening the memory each time. This is why short, repeated study sessions outperform long, exhausting ones. 10 focused minutes of recall today, repeated tomorrow and next week, builds more durable memory than 3 hours of rereading in one night. Most students don't fail because they study too little. They fail because they study in one massive block, then stop. There's also the problem of multitasking. Many students believe they can study while checking messages, watching videos, or listening to unrelated audio. But learning requires attention. Every time attention breaks, the brain resets the learning process. What feels like studying for an hour may only contain 10 minutes of real learning. The correct way to study removes distractions, shortens sessions, and increases intensity. Not intensity and effort, but intensity and focus. Effective students also test themselves early, not at the end, not right before the exam. Early. Testing is not something you do after learning. Testing is how learning happens. Every attempt to recall information strengthens memory pathways, even when answers are incomplete or wrong. This is why flashcards work when used properly, not for rereading, but for retrieval. The goal isn't to flip cards quickly. It's to struggle slightly, answer honestly, and repeat over time. Another major mistake is mistaking neat notes for learning. Clean notes feel satisfying. They look organized. But writing something neatly doesn't mean the brain has encoded it. Learning happens when the student actively processes the information, not when they rewrite it. The brain remembers meaning, not formatting. That's why explaining concepts in simple words is powerful. When a student tries to explain an idea as if teaching someone else, gaps appear immediately. Those gaps are valuable. They show exactly what needs work. This is far more effective than rereading polished notes that hide confusion. Most students also wait until they feel ready to study. But readiness is unreliable. The brain doesn't become motivated first. Motivation follows action. Starting small, even when resistance is present, lowers the barrier and creates momentum. The correct way to study isn't about perfection. It's about alignment with how the brain works. Recall instead of rereading. Spacing instead of cramming. Focus instead of multitasking. Testing instead of passive review. These principles apply whether someone is in high school, university, or learning a new skill later in life. The brain doesn't change its rules. Only the environment does. Students who adopt these methods often notice something surprising. They study less, not more. Sessions become shorter. Fatigue decreases. Confidence increases. Not because the material got easier, but because learning became efficient. This is also why many students believe they're bad at studying. They've never been shown the correct process. They blame themselves for a system that was never designed to work from memory. And once the correct method clicks, studying stops feeling like a punishment. It becomes a tool. The fix isn't studying harder. The fix is studying correctly. If this changed how studying makes sense, try one thing today. Close your notes. Ask yourself what you remember. Struggle with it. That struggle is where learning actually happens. And if you know a student who feels stuck, overwhelmed, or frustrated with studying, share this with them. Because the difference between struggling and succeeding is often not effort, but method